and welcome again to the Skillwork Forum. As always, I'm Tim. I'm joined with my partner here, Brett from Skillwork. And today we're very happy and pleased to have a good friend of ours, a guest from one of our partners that we work with closely here. Really excited to have Jake Williams with us here today. Jake is a kind of a development lead for a company called AIM Services, is a part of a broader company called CED, which is Industrial Solutions Network. Kind of convoluted and complicated. I'll let Jake describe that a little bit. Bottom line is he's kind of a Rockwell distributor, a lot of Rockwell and other high technology manufacturing solution capability. So he is an expert in smart manufacturing, whereas Brett and I, we tend to be experts from time to time about it. We brought Jake in today to talk to us a little bit about his insights, what he's seeing, some of the trends he's seeing out there in manufacturing and smart manufacturing with artificial intelligence and just the advent of big data in traditional manufacturing environment. So, Jake, welcome to the Skillwork Forum. Appreciate you being here, man.
Thanks for having me on, guys. I'm glad this is being recorded because that is the first time I've ever been referred to as an expert for anything.
Well, we throw that word around here pretty legally.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
So don't let it go to your head.
I will be writing this down.
Yeah, exactly. So send it to all your buddies.
Yeah.
So, Jake, you're a Nebraska native. This is home. Our headquarters is here in Nebraska. So Jake is a Nebraska native, big Cornhusker fan.
Big Cornhusker
Even went
fan.
to Ireland last year to see them play out there. And we won't talk about how that went, but you had a good
We went. We showed up when we cheered.
Right. Yeah. So it was an awesome experience, I know. And, Jake is he's a customer-focused guy who helps manufacturing leaders try to solve some of the biggest challenges that they have that they're faced with today. And a lot of that Brett and I talk about. So we just kind of want to get your insights a little bit, Jake, and this idea around smart manufacturing, some of the trends. So maybe we'll just kick it off with, in your mind, when I say smart manufacturing, what does that mean?
Yeah. So smart manufacturing is a change from how manufacturing traditionally has been done. I think I can speak to the last 7 years. 7 years ago, I used to drive by manufacturers as a kid born and raised in Omaha and spent time in Nebraska. And you'd see the silos, you'd see the exhaust, and you look and go, don't know what happens inside that building. I graduated college, started looking for a role, found my way to CED as part of our Industrial Solutions Network team that serves manufacturing in the U.S. You get a chance to go inside those buildings. And now I often describe my day-to-day to everyone as like an episode of how it's made, right? So if you remember that old show, you'd walk in and go, oh, they make hot dogs here. Here's how they make hot dogs, or they make balloons and whatever that is. So smart manufacturing has really hit over the last 20 years as people begin to automate. But specifically, we've seen this big change from islands of automation. That's what we call it, right? We've got a machine that does something, another machine that does something, and people interacting in between to feed those machines. Smart manufacturing for us ties into all the buzzwords you're going to hear in manufacturing, Industry 4.0, smart manufacturing, data-driven decisions. But I think the best way I've heard someone describe it is if you think about the nervous system in your body, you have all these stimulants that send messages to your brain. In manufacturing, we've had left hands, we've had right hands, we've had feet on the plant floor that all interact uniquely, differently. They don't talk. The smart manufacturing is now putting the brain to those systems. So now when your left hand does something, your right hand knows that your right hand can do something else. And so it's everything feeding upwards to your brain that can react differently. And so it's the availability to monitor temperature and humidity and throughput at different areas of the plant and have your system adjust for what's going on.
Yeah, that's a great way to describe it, the nervous system and the body. And, it's interesting that I was just thinking about, there's a description in the Bible, which we like to refer to often. It talks about any organization that works well together is like a body.
Yeah.
And you can't, one part is not more important than the other, but at some point they got to be interconnected and driven by, a central point. So that's a great way to describe it.
Yeah. So if you think of manufacturing historically, you'd go see people walking through a plant floor with the checklist or a clipboard marking down, right? Hey, I'm going to go to this machine. What's my throughput? What's going on? I'm going to record it. I'm going to go to the next machine. I'm going to record what's going on there. And then I'm going to go back to my desk, or I'm going to go back to an operations manager, and I'm going to turn them over 10 spreadsheets that say, here's what I found. Well, now this is, how do we digitalize that, take that all back? And then how do we take one step further now that we can predict inputs, what's happening in different places? How do we get our machines to then respond and say, We can go faster, or we can be a little safer, or we can have better quality by doing and throttling some inputs. So
that's interesting. You talk about the difference between a guy with a clipboard and then connecting it all through automation. The amount of information and the dynamic, the real time. I mean, you go from a guy on a clipboard that, it takes an hour and a half to go collect information and now happens instantaneously.
Yeah.
That's got to introduce a lot of challenges, right?
Yeah, certainly you can get lost in that data. So we were talking about a little bit earlier. As data has been introduced to the plant floor, a lot of software companies developed these big, overwhelming suites of, hey, we can go capture all of these data points in your plant. We can put them all together and we'll give you all this real-time data that you can make decisions from. The problem with that is all data is not valuable. And so you look for, I want to record and get information that will let me make a decision to better my plant. Do I need to know every input? Probably not. So how do I get something a bite at a time that lets me improve quality by 2% and increase throughput by 3%? And so do I need to know every variable? No, but I need to be able to record those predictable events that help me manufacture the best and the safest.
Yeah, I could go off on one of these tangents because, we struggle in any business today with big data. And what do you do? Even in our company, it's like, great, we got all the data. Now what? So Brett, you've been kind of driving us towards what are the true, KPIs is a term. What are our true indicators that we need to be looking at that really are going to help us drive the business?
Yeah.
Same thing happens on the manufacturing floor.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we just did. Actually, we've got a podcast we're going to be doing on, it's really interesting you said that because it was kind of based it off of an article done by NetSuite, which is a big Oracle company, as you said, big software company. And they did this article on 73 metrics that you could. So, but you look at that and I'm looking at a guy that came out of the manufacturing world for 30 years and I'm going, okay. You could measure all of those if you really wanted to.
Yeah.
But of those, which ones really matter. But obviously the technology, Jake, has driven the ability, so the fourth industrial revolution, the smart manufacturing, it's driven this ability to do this. And so, but what do you, when you're talking to plants and manufacturing, engineers, managers, so forth, what's some of the drive? Why are they making the decision to go more into automation? Is it efficiency, safety, people, all the above? What do you see?
Yeah. So I think everyone naturally thinks efficiency first, right? It's like, hey, we think of the message we've been told that if we integrate robots, if we integrate automation into our plant floor, we'll make it faster, we'll make more, we'll lower costs. And that's true, right? That's the business case behind why do we invest into automation. The reality, though, is you can do a bunch of cool and creative things with that will help your business in other ways, right? So one in particular, safety. You might have a task that you can automate and improve efficiency and make more of, but it also makes it safer by automating a job that you can step someone away from something that might put them at risk, right? Even if it's a low risk, if it's 10,000 repetitions a day and you can automate that away, that clears someone away from danger, right? The same thing can be done in quality. Right now, we're working on a project with a manufacturer that does welding, right? So they are integrating robots into their welding process. Well, one of the cool things is vision systems, which is like camera systems that have just continued to evolve in manufacturing, have the technology on them has jumped so many times forward that now you can put a camera on the end of a welding robot. That camera uses AI. While it's welding, that camera will recognize is the quality of that weld at the level that we guarantee to our customers.
In real time, it's all happening
in real time. So now instead of someone coming at the end of the day and looking, okay, we've got 5 hours of operation or 20 hours of operation, I got to go pick out all the gearboxes that aren't up to standard. Your robot sees it right then and said, okay, this one has an issue, push it to the side. This robot has an issue, push it to the side. Then you take that data, right? The operator, the engineering team gets to go out and look and go, okay, we had 6 of them fail or waste, not have the integrity that we look for. Now they can go back and look at all the inputs on those 5 or 6 that got created at that time and go, can we determine why those ones failed? And so wrapping back to the question, right, is like, why do you invest in automation? Why is that the push? Well, I think everyone thinks of the people side, right? Yeah. The Skillwork mission of, hey, we need more people to run our plant. And so maybe automation is going to help us reduce that skilled gap. But at the same time, there's a ton of real value that you can get past just, can we pick up production speed?
That's really interesting. I love to hear those examples. I'm wondering if you have like, do you have any examples of like a company that you took from the Stone Ages, so to speak, to the Jetsons, and with the automation, and what did that look like? What did you guys introduce to them, and how did it help that company?
Yeah. So I think probably one of the cool cases we have of that is not only what's happening on the plant floor is like, hey, we've got people working along a line and there's 30 people and a pandemic like COVID happens and we can't get 30 people, or we safely can't put 30 people next to each other. So we've done robotics and stacking and packaging, things like that have been pretty cool. But we also look into the business system. So how do we take an order from a customer and wrap that all the way down to telling my machines, hey, we took an order and now we've got to prepare it. Take that one step forward of, we're preparing an order. What happens if my machine turns off? And so some of the areas that we've helped a manufacturer jump the farthest is in predictive and preventative maintenance. And so AI and machine learning actually in the components that you buy and assemble to make a machine or make a system now has the capability to monitor itself and say, am I at risk for failure? And so we talk about, hey, we used to have 10 overnight maintenance staff workers, and we haven't been able to have more than 2 here because there's not 8 more to go get from our city. Now, all of a sudden, your machine can start to fill some of that gap and say, hey, out of the 2, don't go check everything. I'm letting you know I need to be fixed. I've got something going on. And so then we see that backwards integration of, now the machine tells you this thing is potentially going to fail. It pings my business system and says, we don't have a spare. We better order a spare. And so you see the vertical integration then of all the way from my machine telling me it needs to be fixed to writing a work order to have one of our 2 techs overnight come fix it on third shift, to, hey, do we have the parts and pieces in the storeroom? To, even if we do, let's get another spare on order. And so probably our most advanced jumps that we've had is certainly integrating like automation on the plant floor, but it's also streamlining all those areas of risk that could affect someone's business.
Yeah, we've talked about that too. It's not just putting robots on the floor. It's end to end, like an ecosystem.
Yeah. Yep.
Supply chain on the front end, raw materials all the way through ordering parts to connecting with your customers when they place an order. Customization too is a big thing, right? That we've heard and researched a lot, that you just can't, the Henry Ford, you can have any color you want as long as it's black.
Yeah.
And now it's like, no, I want it this way, I want it that way. And you can actually on the fly through automation adjust some of that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I was actually reading an article the other day about car manufacturers. Is that the car lots post-COVID, post-pandemic, they're probably not going to have the surplus of cars sitting on the lot anymore. Mm-hmm. Every vehicle is going to be quote unquote made to order. So you'll go to the car lot with some idea of what you want, and then they'll actually order it for you. And the car companies will manage some type of just-in-time assembly. And that's all based on the premise of, we've got these plants that used to be machine operated where we were trying to push as many as we can, to now we have our whole plant as an asset that we can use to make something, right? And so that interconnectivity of devices is how you go from making as many blue trucks and red trucks as you need to, I need 13 red, I need 10 blue, and I need 3 silver.
Yeah, for this customer in this area, the shipping all gets, much more efficient.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. And so, obviously our relationship with you guys is that a lot of your customers' pain points are, automation is great, but I don't have the people to work on it or repair it. So even if your example earlier, you had 2 maintainers overnight, but the equipment they're working on is not the same thing that their dad may have worked on.
Yeah. Yep.
How has the advent of this technology impacted the level of skill that your maintainers and even your production line workers need to have?
Yeah. So the funny thing is, we go into manufacturing plants as a consultant. So we provide technology. I think you mentioned we work closely with Rockwell Automation, who I'll stand on a soapbox and say I think is the best US based components technology manufacturer. Certainly the most like customer centric, which is what we really are, right? How do we get a system in, own it, support it, maintain it? But we go in as a consultant to a plant, and if we were to ask any level of people from C-suite to director, manager, down to the person on the third shift who is just as important to the criticality of the plant, but is fixing a machine, everyone's first, second, third, and fifth complaint is workforce, right? And so when we go into those plants, everyone's vocalizing, we need more people, we need more bodies, but it really turns into, we need more experience and we need more expertise. And so if you peel back that layer of like, hey, we're burdened and we need more people, we need more training, we need more upskilling. We need to take the people that have run this plant for the last 20 years that are going to be here the next 10 and train them how to run the plant for the next 10 years. And then we need to continue to build that surplus of people coming next to learn where we at
the next generation.
Yes. Yeah. And I think you guys have talked often, I think, about like that. Where is the next generation coming from, right? I think millennials, that's a big talking point. Are we the people we're walking into facilities? I'm not think I'm going to surprise anyone. I'm a millennial. I was born in 94. And so,
Brett has underwear older than that.
And I think, so I mentioned earlier, growing up, I drive by facilities all the time. Our office in Omaha is about a half a block away from Kellogg's. I can smell cereal being baked. It's wonderful. Shout out Kellogg's. But I never knew what happened inside that building. Now, for the last 7 years, I walk into a facility and I go, I can't believe in Nebraska, all this stuff gets made, right? Whether it's healthcare or food and beverage or steel or all of those products, right? And so communitively, we're moving that way. But the biggest need is how do we backfill the next group of people in there? And one of the challenges that we quote unquote sell to the leadership of manufacturers is millennials have grown up with data. We've grown up with technology. I carry my phone everywhere. I got notes on my phone. I can turn my lights off at my house. If I was to walk into a manufacturing plant and they said, hey, we're really interested in you being a technician or an engineer, and they hand me a clipboard, it's like I'm visiting a museum. Yeah. I'm not at a workplace. And so one of the big challenges is like, we need to continue to move manufacturers into the era of technology, because if we are going to backfill those jobs, it's going to be with the tools people grew up with. No one's going to walk backwards into that role.
That's a great point, Jake. Because if you think about, we're now even really talking, you millennial, you're getting old now. So you got Gen Z.
Yeah.
Gen Z, yeah. So, they're coming in there and they're even, both of those generations, like you said, are so technically advanced compared to Tim's generation and even, obviously the folks that are still in the plants. And so do you think that is, when I was in the manufacturing, I always used to say we would do automation at that time. A lot of it was not so much out of necessity as it was kind of cool and sexy, and you could argue back and forth in the boardroom whether you were going to get a return on your investment or not. Yeah. But little by little, it was advancing. The feeling that what we see and what we hear from a lot of the clients that we have that you are out there, supporting on the other side, is it's shifted now. It's like automation is no longer just cool. We've got to move with it.
Yeah.
That we either can't find the help to do those labor jobs, or like you said, from a safety perspective. And then I think you bring an interesting point that if you're going to attract that younger generation to enter those skilled trade positions, they're not, I say, shout out to Mike Rowe. We love what he does, but I said his title, Dirty Jobs, has got to change.
Yes.
Because these are not dirty jobs anymore.
Yep.
And it's evolving. So I'm assuming are you seeing it where companies are like, they've got to make this move, otherwise they're just getting further and further behind.
Yeah. I think to your last part first about dirty jobs, I think that's a great point. Big Nebraska football fan, like you talked about. And I think the historic message for Nebraska recruiting for the last 20 years has been like, we get a lot more hits for a recruit if we can bring them here and show them what we have to offer, right? Otherwise, you sit somewhere in the South and you go, Nebraska, cornfields, they might have a building and they probably have a football team, right? I would say manufacturing is really close to that, is similar to if you can get them inside your facility, you can show them what happens there. Coming out of college myself, right? I'm looking for, hey, where am I going to spend my time? I went to school for marketing and economics. And And never did I think I'd be in the manufacturing business. I didn't even understand what that meant. But I imagined I'm going to work for a tech company. Well, I do work for a tech company now. Do you want to know where the biggest tech sandbox is? The biggest culmination of all these technologies that help execute something is inside of a manufacturing plant. But no one knows that. No one understands that. And so what we've seen plants start to do, and we work closely with like the Chamber of Commerce and some collective groups in Nebraska, is even at like a high school age, let's get a plant tour set up. There's manufacturers in other parts of the state here that have internships for people in high school that can do jobs that maybe you can't be on this part of the plant because of whatever's happening there, but you can be in this portion. And so getting those people to tour facilities, one of the cool things is kind of the leadership groups within the state are really open to having other manufacturers and other schools, the community colleges, the universities, come tour their facility and go, let me show you what's going on here.
Yeah.
And so, we see that advancement in manufacturing, but we almost see that advancement as much in recruiting. There's something in manufacturing called a digital twin. I don't know, is that a term you guys are familiar with?
I've read it, but could you expound on it?
Okay, yeah. So digital twin is like, hey, I want to copy the operations that happen inside of my facility in a digital setting. So I want to test if I increase speed or if I increase throughput a certain percent, how do all those systems interact? So it's literally taking, maybe I've got an extrusion process and a cooking process and a molding process, and I want to see how all those things work. And so one of the benefits we've seen is people invest on that from an engineering side, but then take that digital twin to recruiting fairs, put a headset on someone, a VR headset, and allow them to virtually walk through the plant floor while at a recruiting fair. So now you've got a company next door to your booth selling, hey, we're a technology company, we'll give you a computer. Or you walk over to the manufacturing booth, they put a headset on and say, you're on our plant floor right now. Yeah. And so it's been a cool selling point to see, let's pull more people into this by showing how much we have to offer.
Yeah, we talk a lot about, we got to change the paradigm, the shift. Even in high school, I was talking to somebody this morning about high school counselor trying to, they have a son, in high school, thinking about college, graduating. He's not, academics are not his thing. He's a smart kid, but he doesn't want to. So they're like, well, maybe something in the advanced technology you can take in the training. Yeah. Well, he goes to the school counselor and they flip the script on him and sign him up for like 6 AP courses because he's got to go to college because it's the school district that you're familiar with. Because it helps them so that they get inside the schools are getting told you don't want to do that.
Yeah. Yep.
You want an AP so you can go to college.
Yeah.
So we got to change that and job fairs and things like that are part of it. I actually at the Rockwell Automation
show, fair. Yep.
That we went with you guys up in Chicago. I sat in one of those.
Yeah.
I had the virtual and I was in a plant.
Yeah.
And they kicked me out. They said, you're unsafe. I was trying to see what all it could do.
Yeah.
But it's so cool that the technology that's there. And so what do you see like AI and what are the new things coming down the pike that you're hearing about that you're talking to your customers about?
Yeah. So I think, so we were reading that report recently. Rockwell Automation put out a report that looked at, or they interviewed and surveyed 1,300 manufacturing leaders across the globe. So it's a diverse candidate pool. And I think the number was 50% of manufacturers today are using AI and machine learning more than last year. And so I think one of the quotes in there by their CEO is like, we've experienced 20 years of acceleration in the last 2 years. And I think that's true on the plant floor. COVID especially accelerated with the loss of experience, retirements, unfulfilled jobs. Hey, we've got to do something. So we might have sat and not acted, and now we're acting. And now we're in this place of where do we go next? And how do we foresee the future, but also run our plant today?
Yeah. And one thing too, along those lines, Jake, you were talking about maybe a few years ago was let's come in with this monolithic solution.
Yeah.
It's going to be millions of dollars and we're going to overlay this, software solution that does everything, all the bells and whistles. And then was that same article, I forget what the title, but basically it was like paralysis by data.
Yeah.
It's too much.
Yep.
And instead of doing something, they don't do anything. It's too much.
Yeah. So I'll get a bit more granular on the AI and smart manufacturing. So machine learning is taking the inputs that are present while you're manufacturing something, right? And so it's what is the temperature, right? If I'm processing a soybean, I'm looking at temperature and I'm looking at humidity. For every for every measurement of humidity I can get out of the soybean, it's more oil I can extract from the bean. And so it's having your systems now register those, and you can build prime production data sets, right? So it's like my machine now sees in the best environment possible, this is what it looks like. And then having your machine try to duplicate those capabilities. It's also then gives you those data points so that you say, are there external factors that are controlling this? Because then can I start to mitigate some of those external factors? And so AI has been really cool on the quality and the efficiency of a process. Just as big as AI has become in predictive maintenance, which we talked about a little bit, is my machine saying, hey, I'm starting to experience some type of environment that's leading to my failure. It's just as important for someone within a facility to care about when the machine might turn off as much as it is to care, is my machine still running?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's really interesting. You think instead of maybe 5 years ago before AI machine learning, it's just, okay, I've got all the data and it gets reported to someone, and you get the readings on humidity and the soybean example, but then I got to take that, do something with it, go back and tweak a machine instead of now it's just happening in real time.
Yeah, it's no different than our clipboard example of if I have all these silos of data, but I can't connect them together and digest them and make a decision with them. All I have now is, instead of clipboards, computers that tell me 5 different measurements. I only care, the data is only valuable to me if it tells me, here's what's happening in my process, go left or go right. Then I can make the choice to go left or go right. And if it helps me be safer, if it helps me with quality, if it helps me with throughput, then it's valuable to me. Yeah. If it's something that tells me, it'd be great to know what the temperature is in Ireland today, it's completely irrelevant to what I'm going to do. And that's what we look at.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like I said, I spent a lot of years in the manufacturing world. The idea of having the concept of now what we're seeing, this movement towards predictive maintenance, it's because we ran till it broke.
Yep.
That's, and unfortunately, there's still a lot of facilities that run till it breaks. And so, but, then having that, what we see, and we've seen a big shift even in 5 years at Skillwork, in providing the skilled trade help in the shift in, we need people with higher level skills, because as you move towards this predictive and this ability to do this now, it's kind of like, if you're not getting your PMs done, do you have the people that can respond? But the efficiency that it creates, and it just changes that whole environment. Tim and I were just talking about, it almost creates a fear flashback of, in the traditional maintenance sense, breaks down, the line's down, now we got to get it fixed. Everybody's staring at you. If you can get more predictive in that and where it's planned and it's scheduled, it doesn't just make you more efficient. It's safer. It's, because, when you're rushing to fix something, that's how you get scars on your hand.
Yeah.
And so it just changes the whole environment and that thing. So what do you see? What kind of cool trends, and what do you see? Obviously, the technology is moving fast. I think somebody said, in the last 2 years, we've moved 20. But what other things are you guys seeing, or what do you think's is it more adaption of AI and that type of thing, or what trends are you seeing?
Yeah. So a couple funny. You mentioned that, hey, if it's not broke, don't fix it, right?
Yeah.
Like I think that's a phrase you hear in a lot of industries, specifically in manufacturing, right? This thing runs. We're just going to keep running it. One of the things that, as we get into a plant in some type of consulting role and we peel back the onion, a lot of times we get to what has the last 20 years looked like, but what has the last 10 to 5 years looked like? And the goal is always, well, let's squeeze 2% more out of the plant this year. Let's squeeze 1% out of the plant more. Let's be 2% more profitable, which are great goals, right? It helps your business, but at some point then that breaks, right? The whole system breaks. And so we look at, you really have to prioritize competition as opposed to, can I squeeze 1 or 2% more out of this plant, right? We see competition within a company, right? is a plant in Nebraska or is a plant in Tennessee from the same company going to get the next investment, right? We want to help position companies that say, hey, we need to make a new product to meet demand, or we need to double down on supply to meet demand. We want them to look at the assets that are in Nebraska or the assets in Tennessee and be able to make the better choice. And you only do that by positioning yourself better for the next 10, 20 years, right? Having instead of machines be the asset, but the collectivism of your plant, right? The entity that is your operations, the people, the processes, the profit, really, as opposed to they could probably squeeze us through, right? Do you want that long-term trajectory? And so the competition, I think, plays a big part into that. And so that has led to what are other industries doing to improve their facility, right? Or you could have a food and bev plant that takes technology that's been deployed in pharma for years and says, can we apply some of that control into our process and make our products a little bit better, or maybe a little bit more premium, or meet demand, or expand our customer base? And so that variability has been a big impact, and we see that being a driving factor. Then on the outside, there's external factors that affect your progression into technology, right? So if we talk about that, the industrial revolution or industry 4.0 that says, I need to connect my plant, I need all of these pieces making one nervous system, feeding input to the brain of the facility and making decisions. You're in a really practical sense, you're tying everything onto a network. If you Google security right now, what comes up is not a security system for your house, it's cybersecurity. And you can look at all the things happening across the globe. That's a real external factor that we might have this isolated plant that all they're trying to do is get a sensor to take the temperature off something and send it to Bob's office. In the middle of that introduces an area of risk that potentially another nation state could come in and take, are they going to get the temperature? They probably don't care about that, but they want the connectivity. And so now you have something as simple as cybersecurity, right? Taking a temperature somewhere in my plant in the middle of Nebraska and getting it to an office now introduces, can another country potentially hook up to my system and take advantage or ransom of things inside of my facility? And so that alone is a huge motivating factor, right?
So, one of the challenges we have is educating people, about what our model is and some of the demands that they feel the pain. They're not looking at maybe creative solutions. So educating your customers has got to be a huge part of what you guys do, because the idea, you got a plant somewhere in Grand Island, Nebraska that's been producing for 40 years.
Yep.
You go to that plant manager, a guy's been working there for 25 years and say, cybersecurity.
Yeah.
He's going to think about it as, the email at home getting spam, right? I mean, that's got to be an education. The Rockwell Fair that we went to, the biggest demonstration was there that attracted the biggest crowd. I mean, I walked over and like, what are all these people? It was cybersecurity in a manufacturing facility that everybody was interested in seeing.
Yeah.
So how big of a threat is that? Let's be real here. Is it really a threat, or is that just a great selling point?
Yeah. So security is by far the biggest external risk you're going to face as a manufacturer. What we hear from every industry expert, from every company, even from the government itself, it's the reason why they're regulating it in critical industry, right? It's the reason that water manufacturers and utility manufacturers have had things enforced on them, is because of the risk. It is a when, not if business now. I think I've heard the projection that by 2025, the cybercrime industry, not cybersecurity, but the cybercrime industry, those who profit off of security intrusion, will be over a $10 trillion business.
Holy man.
You can Google what $10 trillion worth of business looks like, and all of your favorite brands and companies will add up together to meet that number. I think I was a few weeks ago, we were looking at the average cost of a cybersecurity incident is 22 days manufacturing, or equivalent to $4 million. And so we walk into lots of plants where we're talking about, hey, if we upgrade this machine, we can put in something that's going to speed up 2 times, or it's going to be better quality, or it's going to be safer. And they go, well, downtime is $5,000 or $10,000 an hour. We can't do that until our next shutdown date 3 years from now, right? We run 24/7 for 3 years at a time. That $10,000 an hour to go down for 5 hours to upgrade a machine is like, we can't do it. cybersecurity says you're going to be down for 22 days. What is that effect going to look like on your business, right? And then do you have the recovery processes in place that if someone wipes your system clean, you don't pay the ransom? Can you build your facility back from scratch? Or do you have machines that you no longer own? And so it is a fascinating external threat to the industry. Definitely a huge risk factor.
Wow. Scary and cool at the same time. Just the recognition of that, like you said, not to get off on a tangent, but we've seen it just in the last couple of years. If you're paying attention, the number of utility, the grid is come under attack a few times. You try to keep it a little quiet, but it's out there. So you start to say, you start thinking about, here's company X. Pretty simple to go, hey, if you want us to turn this back on, you need X amount of dollars.
Yeah, it's more the ransomware.
That's what it's going to be.
We have the ability to wipe everything clean, unless you send us whatever. Yeah. It's crazy. And that's a real threat.
Because it's the backsided risk of technology.
That's the backsided risk. So the other thing we often hear, and, maybe from more traditional thinkers or even like some of our partners in the unions, the trade unions, that, hey, you're putting people out of jobs. Automation is going to there's going to be no demand, no need for skilled tradespeople in plants anymore. And, our pushback on that is perhaps the number of production line workers is going to be, and because they're not there by necessity, automation may eliminate the number of those. But in terms of the maintainers, the skilled trades guys, to be able to go and program and repair and troubleshoot that, do you see that as being a threat, or is that going to just increase their need and importance?
So I think the end result is manufacturers are going to have more people working for them, more people employed, more people caring for their family with the profits that are made and the salaries that are paid through manufacturing because of automation, because of smart manufacturing, because the ability to provide the products that a manufacturer does to their customers is only going to grow and strengthen because of their ability to do it better. I think the easiest solution is, if you don't believe me, ask someone within a manufacturing facility. I think it's funny to think like pre-COVID, that was definitely a scare tactic, right? Hey, automation is going to force jobs out of our facility, right? We care for our people. It's not something we're interested in. Well, as soon as you hit the pandemic, right, it was, we can't have that many people in one room, or we can't find those people to work in the facility. And so then it became necessity, right? It wasn't something you had to interpret anymore. It was like, hey, we need this plant to turn on or else no one's working. On the backside of it, though, we talked about that study that Rockwell did of global manufacturers, and that just came out this week. That reported that, do you remember the number? I think it was over 80, maybe 89% of manufacturers that were surveyed
are going to increase.
Yeah. So that they were at least going to have the same, but if not, have more workers in their facility because of manufacturing. If you go talk to HR within any facility we work with, those HR people will tell you that their first priority is keeping people safe and trained, and their second priority is upskilling the workforce they have.
Yep. Upskilling, retention.
Yep.
And making sure, we talk about that all the time. They need to do that. We focus on it here. So the idea that it's going to eliminate, it's not, it's actually going to provide more opportunity with higher wages and safer environments and all the dirty jobs persona. Well, still, you got to have guys go in and turn wrenches and fix things and that sort of thing. But the technology is driving things up and to the right for people. We talk, sometimes it's been called the golden age of skilled tradesmen, because we're entering into, in the late 90s, early 2000s, software engineers and technology people, that just saw boom. They were in such demand. And I think we're seeing the same thing for the space that we work in.
Yeah. So that technology went from being in a lab environment to now being applied. So those workers on the plant floor have to be educated and skilled. And the good thing is the companies that use that technology are like pleading, please bring us more people. Please train them. Please help us train our own people. I don't think we'd be sitting on a podcast for a company called Skillwork that helps plant skilled workers in a facility if manufacturers are going, you know what, we need less people.
Yeah, exactly.
They're saying, give us who you have, right?
Yeah. So the report just continues to validate kind of what we're passionate about. So I would just say to give you a little bit of space, Jake and Brett, unless you have any other questions, talk a little bit about, you're a potential customer out there or somebody in our area, you work in kind of the Midwest here, your company spreads to, multiple states. So what is it that you guys can come and do and help? If maybe we pique somebody's interest here about that, tell us a little bit about what you guys do. What's your model?
So let's hit the name first, because you touched at the beginning, the convoluted name, and I'm sure anyone from my company that listens to this will understand a little bit more than the average. But so the company that I work for has a conglomerate of manufacturing-based solution providers or technology providers. We call it the Industrial Solutions Network. It's roughly 90 locations in the U.S. that plant a flag in the ground and says, we're going to care for the community around us by serving manufacturers and helping them succeed. And so our mission statement is actually manufacturers make strong communities. We make strong manufacturers. And so we send our people out to serve those people face to face to understand, how does the business win in this area? And so you'll hear when I talk about, I want Nebraska to get the investment as opposed to Tennessee. Well, our people in Tennessee or anywhere else are sitting at the table going, we want to help make sure the investment happens here and not somewhere else, not Nebraska. Yeah. And so we're all kind of eager to serve our own self-interest, which is how do we help our community win? And so we do that by technology. So we walk into a plant and say, hey, you're running a plant that was designed and built 30 years ago. Your competitors down the street or across the world are doing it different. We can help you get there. We can help protect your operations. We can help make sure that this plant that runs now can run in 20 years and 30 years, right? We can make sure that you worked here like your dad did, that your son can work here in another 20 years. And so we do that through technology. We also do that through consulting and services. So we come in and say, we understand you're focused on what's happening in your four walls. And I think, Tim, you alluded to it earlier. You go into that maintenance manager, that engineering person, or the director of a business that's been inside that building for 25 years. They know what's happening in their door. We make no exception that when we walk into a plant, we can't run it better than the people that run it. All we can do is say, we've got like an infinite pool of resources to help you understand what's happening in the world today, what's happening in the industry, what's happening in technology. Can we understand where your business challenges are? And we'll try to help educate and maybe marry a solution to those things. And so a lot of our work is that training piece. Hey, be aware this is happening. Sometimes it's, hey, here's a technology. Sometimes it's, can we just help you assess where you're at, right? One of my probably biggest pieces of advice for a manufacturer, I'm having a conversation a couple hours later in Lincoln, is with a manufacturer that's like, hey, we have an idea of where we need to be in 5 years. And that's great. It's a really good spot to be in. But you need to understand where you are today. Otherwise, 5 years from now, when you get there, you're going to realize you built all these things that were siloed from each other. Right? It's like, hey, we made a decision to do this and a decision to do this, but the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. And so we try to slow down that process and say, if we can really evaluate where you're at and then educate you on where you could be, then you know exactly what it takes to get your plant there. Just let us know what resources you need to get that.
That's great. Yeah. And we'll put on the podcast here, a link and information.
Cool. Yeah.
Reach out to you and your company because, we're partnered with you guys too. And we what you do and what we're doing are different sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
But, we're after the same thing. So that's very compelling. And then I really like the idea about helping our clients jointly become more competitive.
Yeah.
And we always say competitive with your people you're selling against, but competitive for resources external to your company too.
Yeah. Yep.
For investment.
Yep.
I mean, that's a new way to think of it. How do you get that? A company that has 10 plants across 5 states, how do you get the dollars? Well, you're more efficient, you're safer, higher quality, all those things to get you to the place where you're the most competitive 5, 8, 10 years down the road. Yeah. It's really a unique perspective. Yeah.
That is good.
Anything else, Fred, you can think about?
No, it's been great. I mean, Jake, I'm like you, I started working in a manufacturing plant when I was 15 and to this day, I'm still, I'm like a kid in a candy store to see how stuff's made.
Yeah.
And it is cool. Like you said, it's a bit of a hidden secret of how cool now the technology is catching up.
Mm-hmm.
And so we got to get these younger generations to see, because like you said, it's amazing. My wife, when, I owned a food manufacturing company, we made bacon. And so, we made 4 million slices of bacon every day, every day. And And,
a lot of bacon.
and she would, and that was always the amazing part. We would go to the different places, and that would be, she's like, who in the world eats all this stuff?
Yeah.
And I'm like, we're this much of the market. Like it takes a lot to feed and to produce products for this, for the U.S., but then also
The world.
worldwide. So it's a cool thing to be part of. We're excited that you came in today. We love the partnership. So.
Yeah.
It's great. So it's obvious, for those watching that Jake is very passionate about what he does, supporting people. He supports customers, and we work closely with these guys. And, if you're interested in that, again, the Industrial Solutions Network, particularly AIM services for Jake, and we'll have a link to be able to get a hold of him and reach out to him if you're interested in that. And part of that is, you need the right people with the right skills to be able to augment your team. And that's kind of where we come in. We consider ourselves a partner as well. This podcast is not necessarily about selling what we do. It's more about educating. But at the end of the day, we're part of that solution as well. So we really appreciate your time listening to us here on the Skillwork Forum. We just want to remind you that you can reach out to us if we can just answer any questions, send somebody to talk to you a little bit more in detail about how we might be able to solve. And we can even hook you up with Jake and some of his cohorts that he works with, whether here in the Midwest or anywhere across the country. So the other thing we want to remind you of is we also are big sponsors of Texas Boys Outdoors. Quite a segue, but Texas Boys Outdoors is a show that we're a sponsor for. They take care of first responders, special needs kids, military veterans. They take them out, expose them to hunting and fishing, the great outdoors. We're proud to sponsor this show. They're moving to Amazon Prime, so they're going big time, Roy and the boys out there. So take a listen to them, support what they do. We appreciate that. We also do another podcast here that from the skill workers perspective called The Proud Skill Worker. And we're awful proud of that as well because we give our skill workers a voice and they deserve a voice. So until next time, appreciate your time. God bless.